Okay, this is going to be my second major demo here. And what I'm going to do in this is show you some different techniques for approaching abstraction. In this one, it's going to be more of an alla prima. In other words, all at once. I'm going to work with a cool dominance this time. And before I start, I always like to get some kind of an idea for shape. Now, these are the same pictures we looked at before, just because they're conveniently here. But again, now see, what we want to do when we're doing a diptych, in other words, we're going to work with two pieces of paper, but when they're framed up, it's going to be one painting. So I'm going to work with a half sheet and a quarter sheet. So the movement of these shapes needs to pass through. So again, just looking at some of these interesting passages here. Isn't this fun? This beautiful sweeping movement coming around and a counter movement. This is what's called the cruciform design, where you have a cross-like shape. But see, this cross-like shape can go at different diagonals, and here we have it again. See, that movement is counter to this movement. That's the kind of thing I'm looking for when I'm looking for a design. See, now this would be very static, very boring, straight, straight. So just by simply angling this a bit, much more interesting. Very nice the way this is coming through. Maybe flipping this over will be more interesting. This is going to give a little more excitement. But I'm looking for shapes that cross over this section and have a counter movement going that way. Okay, now back to this. Look how fun this is when you have the two sections. Ooh, very exciting. So I think you get the idea. It's amazing. You can take a photograph you worked with many times, and this time when you look at it, it takes on a whole new look. And diptychs aren't the only thing you can do. There's no end. You can work with the concept of triptych. Here you can see this was a half sheet and a quarter sheet that I reproduced in a print. So I did half of each side plus the quarter sheet, so I ended up with a triptych. And it reads as one. And see, you're looking for movement, like this color moving through here, this yellow and green crossing over, the blue crossing over to the other side. That's what's important. And so this would be a triptych, meaning 3. 4 would be, what, quadtych? 5 would be, I'm not sure what 5 would be. And 6, look at this lovely picture here by Gary Bukovnik. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 full sheets. When they're together, it reads as one painting. This, I think, would be called a sextych. And if we added one more, we'd have a septych. So think about it. Have some fun with this idea. Not just one painting all the time, maybe 2 or 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, whatever it takes. It would be a beautiful focal part for a show, and it would be easy to transport because, see, each one of these sections are framed separately but hung next to each other on the wall. Let me elaborate by looking at an actual painting here. Now, this is a diptych. This is a half sheet. I've got them taped together just for convenience. But see, this would be framed separately, and this would be framed separately. And then you would hang them on the wall side by side so that the colors and the movement, you have a narrow inner space and a wider unifying mat going around it. And so you could have all 6 of these paintings side by side on the wall, but it would read as one painting. Very exciting. Now, in this particular demonstration, I'm going to move into some collage. So I'm going to be working with pieces of collage. I'm going to be working probably with some imposed shapes over the top, which would be done later. We're just going to do the underpainting at this time. We're also going to be working with some stamping and some new things. It'll be fun. So let's get started.
Bye. Take 2 and 3, 2, 1.
Okay, the first thing I want to do is rip my paper. So I'm going to start with a traditional half sheet. And this is the way I like to rip my paper. Start in the middle, go out, out, lift it up like a mountain, and just a very easy, you can just push it with your thumb or you can pull it with either side. And you can see you get a perfect rip. So that's going to be half of it, and then I'm going to do the other half. So we'll rip that and we'll get started. And I like the ripped edge. In case I ever decide to top mount it, I will have that nice decal edge. Always check your image. Always check for your watermark. Okay, my arches symbol is down here, and this one may not have one, but it's always nice to know that you're working on the front of the paper. If the paint settles in, at least it'll say arches normally without looking at it reversed. Okay, we're ready to get started. First thing I'm going to do, wet the paper back and front. I very seldom staple my work down. I really like working with the paper free. This way, when I wet the back, it's going to stay wet longer. I'm working on my plexiglass again. You can work on the tabletop. You can work on a board. Whatever works. This is just something I like. Okay, so now I'm going to wet this side, and we're ready to go. And I want it good and wet. So take the time. This is a good time to meditate. Think about what you're doing. Okay, so I'm pretty sure this is going to be fine. I usually do a kind of methodical back and forth each way so I haven't missed any spots. Going to get out my 1.5 inch brush. And then one of the things I'm going to work with is my little idea sketch. I'll just set that up here. And I don't know if you can see that, but I've got a directional movement kind of zigzagging through and off the page. Now this time I'm not going to put down any papers to save the whites. I'm actually going to paint around the subject. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to start with my manganese. This is a lovely, lovely blue. One of the nice things about this color is it doesn't move much in water. So it really makes a very nice color to start with. And you can see what I'm doing. As I have a directional movement coming across here, I'm going to keep that passing through to the other side. And this time, where my white patterns are, I'm just going to paint around them. So it's kind of a negative painting. Not kind of negative, it is negative. I'm painting around the white shapes this time. Very deliberate thing. This time I'm going to soften some of these edges. So you can see there's a very gentle movement here. Very light at this point. And now I'm going to work harmonically with this. I'm going to enrich this color. So I'm going to move into my Antwerp blue. So this time I'm going to work on this side of my palette, which is all the cooler colors. Now Antwerp is a color that you can see already moves in water. Wherever I put this color, it's going to move. And it's got a little more yellow in it. So it's giving me some very, very nice, it wants to be a green, is what it wants to be. Now it's important to space your paper. I didn't talk about this, but it is important. So I'm going to leave a space here. You don't want to paint with your papers touching each other. What you want to do is allow what would be the mat and the frame in between. So I've got these about 1 inch apart here. So now if I come through with a diagonal movement, if they're touching and then you pull it apart, that diagonal movement won't work. So it's important that you leave that space. So all I'm doing now is working harmonically with a second blue, my Antwerp. You can see it has a darker value to it. And that's good. I'm starting to think now about where do I want to position some of my darks. Now I'm going to pull in, you can edit some of this. Now I have some collage papers, and I even have a lovely napkin here. This is gorgeous. Now this napkin has several layers of just white paper. You know, it's, in order to function like a napkin, it's got to have all this extra paper. I don't want that. I just want the image itself. And I know there's a second one here. Probably should have peeled this off before I started here. You can edit this out too. Eventually, come on. Don't fall asleep. Okay, here we go. This is it. See that? There was also a second. Ooh, this is exciting. So now I'm down to just this lightweight image. And these are some of the colors that I want to work with. So before I start adding some of this paper, and then I also have a white, lovely archival enru paper. This is a oriental paper from Thailand. And then I may or may not use this. It's quite warm. It may be too much. And then I have some lovely textural papers here that have holes in them. First of all, a white one, and then the same one in yellow and green and kind of a dark burgundy. And see, these colors all pretty much go together. So this is going to be the dominant colors that I'm going to be working with. So one of the first things I'm going to do right now is I'm going to add some of the yellow that is in here. And of course the yellow can go into some of my lights. Usually I start with my lightest light, but I just felt like starting with my cool colors this time. Of course, as it mixes in with the greens, I'm going to start seeing some, mixes in with the blues, I'm going to start seeing some greens. And as soon as I see this starting to dry, I'm going to get out my fine mister, just like before, and I'm going to keep this nice and wet, because I want these colors to be flowing together. See, it's even good to bless your paper. I like that. Breaks it up a bit. So this is all my Quin Gold. I'm putting some in my light patterns, and I'm also running it off the edge of the paper a bit. Maybe off of this corner too. So now it's time to evaluate. I think I need just a little bit more down here. And I'm almost ready to start putting in the paper, but I think what I'll do is add, again, just a little bit of this warm, this color right in here, which I see as kind of this quinacridone orange. So now I'm going to start having some fun with shapes. And I'm going to keep this orange only in my yellow for now. So I'm going to harmonically enrich my warm color. Pull it through, touch off the edge here. Move it up. So now we've got a little blush of that color going through. Wouldn't hurt to bless the painting again. Now let's have some fun. This is going to become our dark pattern. So by actually putting this color down, see I have this straight edge here. I'll just put that right along the straight edge of my painting. And we're going to start with some movement coming in. Now I'm going to connect that movement. And we're going to move it along as our eye passes over to the next page. I'm going to go in and out, moving your eye up. Now let's see. So I want this to come in here. Move your eye back up again. And there, now you can see what's happening. It should be pretty visual. I'm simply moving the viewer's eye through the picture. I'm directing it with these darks. These are going to be my darkest darks in the whole painting. So one of the things I want to do is decide now, where are you going to go off the page? See, and I'm going to go off the page over here. And again, my painting is starting to dry a bit. My hand moving. I'm going to keep wetting, keeping this wet. Now, if you were working in Alaska or maybe Arizona, it'd be very difficult. If you happen to live in Florida, it should be a piece of cake. Okay, so how is this going to connect to this? I'm going to pull it down. I don't want to get too much, I don't want the same angle. See, this is this way, so let's turn this angle even a little bit more, and then let's just change the direction. Moving your eye up, up. This is fun. It's almost too easy. Now we haven't gone off the bottom of the page here, and I want to. So I'm going to come down. I don't have to go exactly off the bottom, but I want to come close. I want to lead the viewer down there. Maybe have some little interesting intersections here. They don't have to be, not all the pieces have to be the same. We can create some little intersections coming out, creating interest. Okay, now I'm ready to enrich this. One of my very favorite papers is this Enroux. It's the clear white. It's only 20 grams. There will be a little piece of this in your kit. And what I love about this is it absorbs the color that you put it in. So because it's white, it becomes whatever color you want it to be. This isn't going to change that much. But with this color, this white, you are in charge. So this, whenever I put this down, you can see it becomes darker. So what I'm doing now is I'm thinking about the relationship between this and this. I still want to have areas of rest, but I want to enrich what I've created here. So we're going to connect these. Remember, whenever you're at this intersection, if it's on one side, it's got to come to the other. So we're zigging and zagging through here. Watch these straight edges. If you put this down and have a straight edge there, you're not going to like it. So what I do is I save the straight edges for the edge of the paper. And then I use these irregular edges to move through the picture. Now we could also use gauze like we did last time to create linear shapes, but I got a different trick up my sleeve for this one. Okay, I'm just going to put these down now without talking. You can edit out that phone call. Maybe even speed it up while I'm getting this section designed. So, I can edit out this. Well, better not. This is important. They have to know how often I have to keep wetting it. Okay. So this, wouldn't that be kind of a fun time to do a little speed up? What do you think, Don?
Okay.
Okay. Okay, you can put my voice back on again now. Okay, now what I've done is I've designed a number of these Enru papers, the clear white, and then what I'm doing is I'm spraying into them to make sure they're fully dampened. Then you're going to see that color come alive. Ooh, I love it. And the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to add some of these other lovely textural things. Now here again, see those straight edges? Be careful with those straight edges. We want those to be touching on the edge. Now here I'm putting a yellow texture into the yellow, knowing it's going to absorb that color and become darker. So I'm just enriching the texture. I love this stuff. And connecting. I'm always thinking, how can this connect to this? And this time we're actually adding some color to it. Now if I add the yellow into a blue, it's going to turn to green. I'll show you. So you can see how this turned green because it was yellow to begin with. Here it's just kind of enriching the color that's here. Again, we have to wet it. But I like what's happening. Now I can also add the green. And when I'm doing the green, I'm going to mostly connect this to my darks because this is going to get darker. So this is going to be a nice transition leading into the darks. And it's really kind of fun to, it's like going to the candy store when you can have an opportunity to purchase some of these papers. They're all archival papers. Now that napkin isn't archival, so I'm going to, when I'm all done with this painting, I will give it a coat of acrylic spray or matte medium or gloss medium so that it's sealed in there and it should be okay. But you can see what's happening now with these textures. And I'm still trying to have areas that are restful where nothing is happening. And then I'm going to have areas where your eye will follow these dark patterns. So I think I'm just going to go into this area a little bit now. And this is our darkest dark. Ooh, this is going to get really dark. So when I see this color here, that's where I'm going to add it. Again, as just a little connecting device. There's the purple. I'm going to move it in this area. I see it in here. This would be a nice connection. Of course, I have to cross over a bit here. Want our eye to go across. Maybe in here. Draw out a bit. So wherever I see this purple, that's where I'm putting it. I don't want to, what you don't want to do is say put it right in the middle of a nice rest area. See how bad that is? We're trying to connect. How does that texture connect to that and lead your eye into this? So everything here has a purpose. Now we're ready to come in and start adding more color. This is very exciting. One of the things I want to do is I want to put color down by stamping. Now this stamp is, you can buy these, they're just a little piece of linoleum, and then by drawing on it, what I like to do is to draw on this with my marker, these value markers that you saw me work with earlier. So I will simply draw my design on here, and then just taking one of these very inexpensive, like a speedball, they're very easy to cut. You can just see, you don't even have to draw. If you want to, you can just go ahead and make a cut very spontaneously. But I kind of like designing these, and I have many of these. I just, every chance I get, I go ahead, cut out some of these. This is an abstract pattern. This happens to be some peppers. This is kind of an apple design, but if I just stamp this corner, it's a lovely butterfly. And I've got sunflowers, all kinds of fun stuff. So I'm going to do a little stamping here. Now this is going to run the picture into a little bit of realism, but I'm going to treat it very abstractly. So I'm using my 1-inch flat brush, and I'm going to pick up, and I'm going to add, this is my permanent magenta. So I'm holding it at this angle. What I'm doing is I'm just picking up that texture. See, I'm not painting into it like this, I'm holding it at this angle. Now I'm into my French ultramarine blue. Now I'm back into my magenta. It's a very rich color. If it's too wet, it won't stick very well. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to stamp this, and this is going to become an integral part of the painting. So let's stick it on here and see what happens. Ooh, see, again, another connection. And because it's wet, because the picture is wet, it's going to give me a soft image. If I stamp this on dry paper, it's going to be very obvious. Now, this image goes off the edge, so I'm going to stamp it from the edge coming in. Just half of it. Oh, neat. Let's try at least one. We need to do some stamping over here. So I don't always ink up the entire thing. I often will just do part of it. So let's see. We're coming in here. I think we could do part in here. And maybe down here. Going off the edge. Oh, that's kind of fun. I like that. So I'm mostly using this just to create some interesting texture. So I don't always stamp the whole thing. Okay. Now it's time to get out my paint and to think about how can I enrich this painting. So one of the first things I do is I clean this up. I actually start with a nice fresh palette. And what I want to do is I want to come in here and make more of a cool dominance. I had talked about that before. So I'm going to go into more of my manganese. I'm going to go into more of my Antwerp. And I'm going to go into more of my magenta. So this will wrap up now the first underpainting. And see, what I'm going to do is I'm going to try to tie this together with these darks. First of all, the manganese. So I might even paint through next to, but you can see how it's starting now to tie the painting together a little better. Very important. If you start seeing hard edges like that, get out your sprayer. Might even have to touch it with your finger. Move the paint around a bit, but keep it wet as long as you can. This is your playtime. So this is, I'm still working with the manganese, a very soft blue. See, when I paint into that, it softens it up a little bit. So I'm connecting, connecting, connecting. How can we tie this picture together so it isn't half warm, half cool? Remember I said I wanted a cool dominance? Well, I better do something about that because it was looking pretty warm. So I'll green up some of the yellows. Okay, now I'm going to go into my Antwerp. Antwerp is a much darker value. Ooh, this is exciting. So now we should be seeing some much darker action in our pattern of darks here. Much better. Here too, I'll finish this off and you can just speed it up. Okay, for my last death-defying act, I'm going to come in with the magenta. And this is a beautiful warm and cool. But I want to stay out of my yellow. Magenta and yellow make a very ugly gray. Not necessarily ugly, but it's not what we want. We want to keep our color nice and fresh. So I'm going to basically stay in my cools, enriching it harmonically. Trying to make these dark patterns feel a little more comfortable because there's some darker values connecting them. And we're almost done. So always think about connecting, connecting, connecting. How does your eye connect here? Oops, see, we're getting a few hard edges there. Just show them who's boss. Whenever that happens, this is kind of an obvious warm here. I think I'll just cool that down a little bit, gray it a bit. If you want to, now some of those same things that we used earlier would work. We could put a little salt in. Now remember, my version of salt is only where the lights are. To me, it's a nice little transition. I would never put salt into a real dark area. So I'm only putting, like, you could almost count the number of grams of salt I put down. You have to be very careful because the salt can absolutely take over a painting. So I think this is ready now to be set aside and to again dry. Quite pleased with the movement through it. I like some of the areas of rest. I like the fact that I can still see some whites, not only within the center of the pattern here, but also along the edges. So we'll put this aside and see what happens. Okay, now this has dried, and so all of the paper has lost a lot of its value. I mean, the color intensity has gone away, and it's actually looking pretty dark because this didn't lose any intensity. But you'll see as I glue down this paper, the intensity comes back, and the good news is it stays back. Now this is going to be reversed because of the mirror, and I'm really not left-handed, everybody. But this is called Yes Paste, and you have to look for the newer version of it. Always make sure it says acid-free for archival work. The original Yes Paste was not acid-free. And if you ever open your Yes Paste and it's got a kind of a pinky color to it, chances are it's starting to deteriorate. But this new stuff never does. And what I do is I just pour a little water into the jar itself. And with a very slow rhythm, I activate the glue so that it becomes quite thin. So if you can see, I don't know if you can see this, but it's almost like a cream or a milk. But you can see the paint, or you see the glue on the end of the brush here. So if you don't get enough glue down, it's not going to do a good job of gluing. And the one thing I like, the reason I've switched to Yes Paste rather than working with the matte medium or gloss medium is there is no resist. So now this is really exciting. Watch what happens. I'm going to put this down, it's going to penetrate through that paper, and it's going to bond it to the surface. And watch how much darker this gets. See how the color intensifies? It passes through. And in this is my napkin, so I gotta make sure I get enough paint under, enough glue to go through this. And what it does is it leaves me an absolutely workable surface. Now watch, this will get darker. So it's gonna look just like it did when it was wet, and it's gonna stay that way when it dries. So I'm gonna go ahead and glue down all this paper, and when it's dry, I'm gonna come back and show you how we can go about finishing this. And if you've ever worked with the, what's it called, matte medium, it's really frustrating because see all this over painting and stroking that I'm doing here, when you come on with color later, you're going to get a resist. With this Yes Paste, no resist. It's the only way to go. The other good thing about the Yes Paste is it's easy cleanup. You can just, it cleans up with water. And the other good thing is, if you don't like it, let's say I decide those are way too dark, and in the final translation, I just want to get rid of them. Even though I've glued them down, I can wet it and I can lift it. So it does leave not only a workable surface to paint on, it leaves a workable surface in terms of you can take it apart and get rid of it later. I've had people float away everything on their painting. Just stick it under water for a while, come back, take it off. Okay, so when we come back, we'll finish the painting. Should we just let this run and it'll be fast? This is the hard part when I'm teaching, just getting everybody to glue their papers down, get the paper dry. Okay. Now my paper is absolutely dry, so this is the point where you need to look at the painting. What does it need? Are the shapes connected? Do you want to intensify some colors? Do you want to change the color balance? You know, do you need to pull some warm? See, that would be nice to pull a little warm in here. There's no warm in here. Warm is sort of isolated, so we definitely need to get our cool, warm balance. And another thing I see here is this long diagonal, very straight. We need to add a little bend. We need to pull some interest down into this area. So this is what you do. You want to evaluate it. I find the best way to evaluate it is to put a little working mat around it, because it really sets it off, makes it look more like a finished painting, and you can make a better judgment about what your painting might need. So it definitely needs some help. So let's put this away. One of the things I talked about earlier was that in this particular lesson I was going to do a linear shape, but I was going to accomplish that a little differently than with the gauze. And you already know about the webbing spray because I used that earlier. So this is black. This is kind of daring of me, but I'm just playing anyway. So I'm going to take and try to add some of these interesting patterns here of linear lines, and I want them to kind of go through the area where my interest is. Oops, see, and if you get too close, you get those lines kind of, well, sort of like your kids. You gotta like whatever you got because you can't really change it too much. So that's fine. I'm happy with this. Next thing I want to do is think about the possibility of maybe connecting some of these with more collage. So I have all the colors out that I worked with earlier. I've got the green, the purple, the yellow, and I still have some of these napkins that could actually be added here and there if I need it. And if I think I need a color accent, like this very nice warm color, I may even add a little accent of this warm color here and there. So I'm going to keep these handy. I've also got some additional toys out here. These are things like, this is an oil pastel. And what's interesting about these are water-soluble oil pastels. And you can see I haven't even really used them. They're kind of a new toy. I probably will maybe try a little something with those. And of course, for years I've worked with these Karlyn Dash. It's a water-soluble crayon. Lovely. And these are water-soluble pencils. And so I've got a lot of fun toys here, a lot of things that I can work with for color accents. And to me, that's what this is all about. You just use your intuition, just take a chance that you're going to make it better. So I'm going to start by wetting it. I always like to do another round with the wet. So we'll wet it first, back side first, then the front. I'm on Arches paper, so I don't have to worry about it doing anything strange like the color running. Everything's going to stay right intact. And don't forget, you can quit at any time. If you feel your painting looks completed, by all means, stop. Sometimes we go too far, and I've certainly done that more than once. Now I'm going to roll off the additional moisture so that we're just down to a nice, slightly damp surface. One that's going to receive the added color, but it's not going to just run in all directions. It's going to give me some control. And I like control. Looks like I'm not in control, but actually I have more control than you think. Okay, first thing I'm going to do is try to connect some of these darks. So I'm going to come in with colors that are similar. This is a cool version. I love this manganese blue. What a delicious blue that is. So maybe I can make some of these blues just a little bit brighter. I also wanted to point out the salt, just that very subtle. Remember I said I only put my salt where my whites are? So see how we go from the white to a dot, 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 dot into a dark. White, dot, 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 dot into a dark. So it's very subtle, but I really do like that look. And maybe some of these little shapes that happened with the black spray would be something I'd want to incorporate into the picture. We'll just see what happens here. So I'm just going to intensify my pattern a bit. Remember, my paper's slightly damp, so I actually can add these colors and they're not going to just run all over the place. Now I'm going to go in with some of my magenta and French ultramarine. And basically what I'm doing is connecting. I want to pull some interest down here. So if I come in with a dark pattern in a reverse here, going this direction, I think that will help. If I start seeing hard edges I don't like, got my sprayer handy. Can always soften edges that I feel are too hard. So I have my trusty sprayer here all the time. This is what I call my fine mister. It's hard to see, but the joke is I've got a picture of my husband on my fine mister bottle. But I can see I need to replace it. It's getting pretty hard to see. Okay, so we're going to pull in a little bit of color to connect some of the darks. Now I mentioned earlier that I feel this color has gotten a little isolated here. That's my quinacridone burnt orange. So I'm going to pull that color in and try to form some kind of a connection. So now your eye is moving up. Let's pull it right into this area. See, every time you layer the color, you get a transparent glaze. When I put that orange over the top of the purple, changes it quite a bit. If I put that orange over my blue, it'll turn slightly green just because there's so much yellow in this. So I like that a little better now that we've keyed up the accent color there. And I think this needs to be warmed up a bit too. So let's, if we put it here, of course we have to cross over. We're thinking diptych now. Think of this as one painting. So now I'm going to pull in a little accent color here. Try to connect. I'm going to pull this through here. Kind of a circular fashion. Connecting down here. Now another thing we can do is we can get out that stamp that I used earlier. Now my paper is still quite damp, but if I want to, I can add a little additional color. And I've gotten kind of purple here. I think I'm going to switch to more of a blue-green. This is such a dominant green in that pattern. I think I'll do that. So I'm going to take my gold, Quin Gold. This is a great combination. Quinacridone Gold and Antwerp Blue. Gives you a really beautiful dark olivey green. So I'm going to try stamping with this olivey green. Again, I'm going with my brush flat, a flat brush. So I'm just capturing that top edge. Then I'm going into a little French ultramarine blue too, just to make this dark. And we'll try stamping a little. Now this is the stamp I can lead in from an edge with it. Great. And so let's pull it around and add another one in here. See, and that's giving us a nice connection. We'll ink her up again, going between my green and blue. So a little French ultramarine, Little Antwerp, little gold. Keep it on the green side. And let's see. I think we'll stamp one right in here. It's a nice focal area. Can't really tell what it is, but it's okay. One more shape flitting up here. See, and I'm not worried about getting the, I don't want it to look too much like butterflies. I'm just mostly interested in that pattern. If it starts to look too much like butterflies, I've got my sprayer handy and I can literally melt out any of those areas that are too prominent. So I'm just going to take one quick play a little bit with some of these crayons. This is the Craypaws. And see, these are opaque, so if I want to add a little lighter color in here, it's kind of pleasant. I can draw on top of the, oops, actually ripped through there. So I can draw right on top. Let's take a look at some of the choices I have here. Get these a little closer. Now this picture you couldn't enter in a transparent show, obviously, because it's got all kinds of mixed media in it. And once I've crossed over the line and I'm into mixed media, then I just go for it. So if I think I want to pull in some more yellow, the crayons are great. These really are fun to use. So I don't think you need to watch me do my playtime now. The idea of this video is just to give you some great ideas, get you started, help you find your own voice. I'm going to just put the mat over this. Always have to look at a painting in a mat. It's the only way to do a final evaluation. You can see it looks a little bit better. I was thinking about drawing a bunch of lines in here so you could see how that is done, but I've done that in so many videos. So let me just go ahead and put in this picture I showed you earlier, and we'll just talk about it this time. So here you can see I actually took and drew a shape. So you can see the shape starts here but crosses over to here. I added another shape here, another shape going off here, and then another shape cutting through here. I mean, they can get as complicated as you'd like them to be. I don't have this lined up perfectly, but I think you can bear with me. And did a little stamping with that same stamp. And the interesting thing is the reversals. See here how I made it into a linear shape, warm, transferring into a white shape with the cool on each side. And we go from cool back to warm over here, back to warm here, back to cool here. So you just kind of move around. It's got a limited palette. It's basically your quinacridone burnt orange, the gold, and the Antwerp in this particular picture. And I got started with this technique mostly with semi-abstraction. Here's one I did earlier with the theme of sunflowers. And you can see the same idea. Here we have the shape crossing over, another shape crossing through, another shape here, things crossing between the shapes, going off the edges. And I really didn't know this was going to be sunflowers when I started out. I just started putting down all these colors, and by gosh, it turned out to be sunflowers. So let your imagination go run wild, and I hope it goes well for you.